Was an impromptu private sit-down with the woman heading the criminal investigations into both Hillary Clinton's State Department communications and the Clinton Foundation. And when we caught up with Loretta Lynch yesterday, she insisted nothing untoward took place.
You don't believe that that gives off the appearance of any impropriety while your agency is investigating his wife?
My agency is involved in a matter looking at State Department policies and issues. It's being handled by career investigators and career agents who always follow the facts and the law and do the same thorough and independent examination in this matter that they've done in all.
Today, however, some top Republicans started calling for Ms. Lynch to step aside and to propose a special prosecutor to take over this Clinton probe. And the White House earlier found itself on the ropes over why Ms. Lynch thought this meeting was a good idea.
Is the White House concerned about even just the appearance of political influence because of that meeting?
Well, listen, I'm not going to second guess the way that this investigation should move forward or should be handled. Again,
are you saying that the White House feels that it's fine that she had this meeting with Clinton? There's no problem with it?
I think what I'm saying is that the president believes that this principle of protecting any investigation from any sort of political interference is critically important. I think what should give people confidence is the 30-year career that Attorney General Lynch has in keeping the public's trust.
In a moment, we will review the rules with former Attorney General Michael Mukasey. Plus, two top White House veterans from the Obama and Bush administrations join us. Mark Thiessen and Austin Goolsbee will take up the debate. But first, Trace Gallagher is in our West Coast newsroom tonight with the newest developments. Trace?
Megan, the conservative legal watchdog group Judicial Watch is now calling for the DOJ Inspector General to investigate the meeting between Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton, saying it, quote, creates the appearance of violation of law, ethical standards, and good judgment, going on to call it an outrageous abuse of the public's trust. And despite the Attorney General saying she and the former president spoke primarily about grandchildren and golf, the presumptive GOP nominee was not satisfied. Watch.
When I first heard that yesterday afternoon, I actually thought they were joking. I thought the people that told me was, you know, I said, no way. It's just no way that's going to happen. And it happened. And I'm flabbergasted by it. I think it's amazing. I've never seen anything like that before.
Even some Democrats were baffled by the private meeting on board a parked plane. Delaware Senator Chris Coons said it sends the wrong message, and former Obama senior advisor David Axelrod called it foolish. The White House clearly thinks it's much ado about nothing, and New York Senator Chuck Schumer brushed off the meeting, saying it didn't matter. A big change of heart for Schumer from 2006 when he called on then Attorney General Alberto Gonzales to recuse himself from the Jack Abramoff lobbying scandal and its connections to the Bush administration. Schumer even sent a letter to Gonzales saying, quote, we believe that public confidence can only be assured and that appearance of conflict can only be avoided if you recuse yourself. The letter was also signed by then Illinois Senator Barack Obama and then New York Senator Hillary Clinton. Megan.
Trace, thank you. Joining me now with more, former Attorney General of the United States, Michael Mukasey. Judge, great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Good to be here, Megan.
So you had this very post that Miss Loretta Lynch holds right now.
I did.
Was she out of line?
I think it was a mistake. People make mistakes all the time.
Why was it a mistake?
It was a mistake because of a written rule that a surgeon washes his hands before he operates. There are some things that are so elementary that you don't have to have a written rule to have them in effect. What
of the fact that they say it wasn't really a meeting, it was a glad-handing moment. Their planes just happened to meet at the airport. They talked about grandkids only.
Yeah. Megan, the Attorney General is protected by a security detail of FBI agents. I assume she was traveling with staff since she was on government business. The President is protected by a detail of Secret Service agents. They don't even work for the same department. They don't encounter each other casually. That happens by design, and I think actually it was not her fault. It was the President's design, from what I read in the accounts. He was the one who
What would you have done
forward.
if you had been the Attorney General in this position and you got word that he wanted to come on board your plane to say hello?
I like to think I would have either said no or that I would have insisted that one of my staff be there for the meeting. But you know what? If I hadn't, somebody would have tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, boss, don't do this.
Because
as in fact happened while I was here.
That's right. And actually, you did say, I'm not going to hear certain cases in which there was just even the appearance
my
of a conflict.
My son was representing a defendant in the Bernie Madoff case. Not Madoff, but somebody far down the chain. I didn't have anything to do with the Madoff case.
And you recuse yourself
Yes.
from having anything to do with it. Should she do that? I mean, does this meeting justify that, or is it a combination? Because the White House has also come under pressure here because President Obama has endorsed Hillary Clinton while his Justice Department is investigating her criminally.
The problem is the whole set of circumstances undermines public confidence in the department and in the result. You have months of effort by hundreds of FBI agents, by dedicated prosecutors within the department. John Carlin, who is the assistant AG in charge of the National Security Division, is involved in this. I mean, the National Security Division is involved in this investigation. He is a straight arrow. Everybody working on this case is a straight arrow. And you put a cloud over everything they're doing by having something like this take place.
What should she do? How can she remove the cloud?
She can remove the cloud by putting in place a procedure that is there for the taking. That is, you take yourself out of it and you put the Deputy Attorney General, Sally Yates, who was a very capable lawyer, really has the same background that Loretta Lynch herself has, a U.S. attorney in a major city, and enormously capable. She's shown that.
That doesn't, even though Barack Obama's endorsed Hillary Clinton, you're saying that removes the conflict or the appearance of impropriety from this meeting.
We're talking.
But does that get it done?
Yes, it gets it done. We're talking about people. This is all about people. And the people investigating the case are, I assure you, investigating it with only the case in mind. Sally Yates, if she took over, would take over with only the case in mind.
We shall see. So far, that's being scoffed at by all corners in Washington.
It shouldn't be, because you're putting in peril the work of professional prosecutors and the morale of the Justice Department. That's not something you should do lightly.
And an investigation the entire country is watching. The entire country.
That's going to have momentous results.
Great to see you, sir.
Good to be with you.
Also with us tonight, Mark Thiessen, a Fox News contributor and former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush, and Austin Goolsbee, President Obama's former chief economist and now an economics professor at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. Great to see you both.
Good to see you, Megyn.
Mark, what do you make of it?
Well, I mean, this shows a stunning lack of judgment on part of both of these individuals, but we're used to bad judgment from Bill and Hillary Clinton. What is troubling and disturbing is the bad judgment showed by Loretta Lynch in this case. I mean, they didn't just bump into each other in an airport lounge. They sat down and had a meeting for 30 minutes. Bill Clinton actually waited for her plane to arrive, delayed his plane according to the news accounts, and then requested the permission to come on board her plane, was granted it, and they spent 30 minutes talking. She's the Attorney General of the United States. You can't do that. And it's not just a former president. This is a man, he's not only just married to the subject of a criminal investigation, he's probably a witness in that FBI criminal investigation and could be a subject of the criminal investigation, or at least possibly a target. He's a person of interest. The Attorney General does not meet with a person of interest to talk even about their grandchildren.
That's the problem, Austin. I mean, if he were just a former president, you know, just saying hi as a former president, that's one thing. But he is a potential witness in this case, isn't he?
Look, I don't know. Megyn, you're a legal expert. I'm a business professor. You don't even want to know what I think about lawyers. What I would say is this. If we look back over the 2000s when the Bush administration was there, I like that in your segment you re-raised the bit about Alberto Gonzales. There is a partisan nature in this that I think maybe we forget. We've had experiences that have established that friendship is not a conflict of interest. We had Justice Scalia was personal friends with Vice President Cheney. Vice President Cheney had taken him hunting, often took him to dinner. There was a dispute that went to the Supreme Court about should Cheney's Energy Task Force have to release all that information to the public. We decided that wasn't a conflict of interest, even though they were friends and they had a meeting. Clarence Thomas's wife was working for a Tea Party activist unit while he was deciding the Citizens United case, while he was deciding the Obamacare case.
But don't you see, do you see any distinction in the fact that she's investigating his foundation and his wife, and he might be a witness?
She was there with her. I don't know anything about legal investigations. You have a law degree.
But that's
I mean,
a cop-out. You're too smart for that.
Expert.
You're too
But
smart for
what
that. You
I'm
don't have to
saying
be.
is
I mean, the people watching this show right now in Middle America, they are very smart, and they get it. They may not have a law degree, and they get that you don't have the would-be prosecutor in a case sit there glad-handing with the potential subject or a witness in it. I'll give it to you, Mark.
But
you do not need a law degree to figure that out. It's basic common sense. And in the Bush administration, since Austin raised it, John Ashcroft recused himself in the case in the Valerie Plame investigation and allowed James Comey, who's now the FBI director, to appoint a special prosecutor. But here's the smoking gun in terms of the fact that they knew that this was wrong, is that she didn't disclose it. We'd only learned about this because a news reporter, a local news reporter, got a tip that the meeting had happened and asked her about it. She had never disclosed this. And in fact, they knew it was wrong because that local reporter reported that her security detail insisted no one take pictures. Since when does somebody meet with a former president and not take a picture? They didn't want any photographic evidence. They were trying to cover this up.
He's got you
They
there,
were trying to cover
Austin.
this up. If there was nothing wrong, give us the selfie. Give us the selfie.
Where's the selfie, Austin?
Look, I believe that's misleading. This is a meeting that, as I understand it, Loretta Lynch's husband was there with her. They met at the airport. It's true you have a security detail, so if you're going to bump into someone and you find out that your friend is going to be at the airport, it's not like if Mark and I are stuck in the airport lobby, we just walk up and hang out and, have some Chipotle.
It's tough to glad-hand
We're not
really
under
before the
investigation.
president and the sitting attorney general. You got to go through layers. But even, Austin, even David Axelrod has come out and said, the appearance of this is just, it's wrong. The average Joe sitting at home gets it. Like, Joe Smith, sitting in Iowa right now, understands that if his spouse were under investigation, there ain't no prosecutor in the land that's going to sit with Joe and glad hand about grandkids and golf. And it smacks of elitism and how connected the Clintons are and how willing he may be to use his name and position to help her.
If you look at the Alberto Gonzalez situation where he was the attorney general, and in the Scooter Libby case, and as well as in those previous cases, he did not recuse himself. He did not appoint a special prosecutor.
John Ashcroft did. Schumer mentioned it in his letter today at the time.
I'm not disputing John Ashcroft did. I would have to go look at what the facts were of his involvement with Valerie Plame.
But now we're really going down the rabbit hole. But the thing is,
in
can I just ask Mark?
They asked him to recuse himself.
Recusal is an extraordinary. Recusal is extraordinary. For one meeting with the guy, recusal is an extraordinary thing. But I'm amazed that we can't even agree that this was a bad decision on her part. Austin, you can't even give us that?
Well, I don't know anything about it.
He can't.
It doesn't
the answer's no.
Like
I got to leave it there. Joe Smith is not happy with you.
Bad idea. And Bill Clinton, by the way, Bill Clinton is a former state attorney general. Austin, Bill Clinton's a former state attorney general. He's a lawyer. He ought to have known that he shouldn't have had that meeting.
And Loretta Lynch
he's
knows.
Hurting his own wife. Because she's the one person.
I don't know why you would do that unless they were
she's the one person
I don't know.
Who should not want this meeting to have taken place.
Bill Clinton is not some bumpkin who does oh, there's her plane. He is one of the most skilled political operatives in modern American history, and he's also had a lot of dealings with accusations when it comes to violating the law. The man is not stupid.
And boundaries.
And if you want the viewers to believe it was an accident or just coincidence, he wound up on that plane.
No boundaries with women, Megan.
Maybe a bridge too far. All right, gotta go. Philip Haney. We actually interviewed Mr. Haney on this show back in December. Here's proof. And on Tuesday, he testified that the administration removed references to Islam from his terror investigations, potentially missing warning signs pointing to the San Bernardino and now the Orlando terrorists. Well, just hours ago, Senator Ted Cruz took up the issue with Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson.
Was that testimony accurate?
I have no idea. I don't know who Mr. Heenan is. I wouldn't know him if he walked in the room.
Would it concern you if it was accurate?
I think this is all very interesting, makes for good political debate. But
you're entitled to give speeches other times. My question was if you were aware that the information has been scrubbed. When you see the red flags of radical Islamic terrorism, you do not follow up on them effectively, and we have terrorist attack after terrorist attack after terrorist attack that could have been prevented but for this administration's willful blindness.
Joining us now, Tucker Carlson, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller and co-host of Fox & Friends, and Robert Zimmerman, a DNC committee member and Democratic strategist. Good to see you both.
Good to be with you.
So the essence of Haney's allegation is that the administration's been scrubbing references to jihad, to Sharia, and other items, and actually reversed his own work on mosques in America in a way that undermined, and he believes could have prevented potentially San Bernardino and possibly Orlando, right?
Well, sure. We don't need his word for it. I mean, they scrubbed the 9/11 call just the other day. They are, and by the way, it betrays their position. Their words don't matter. I mean, who cares what you call them? We know what the threat is. The words very much matter to them. They're monomaniacal about it. They're utterly focused on scrubbing references to specific Islamic connections to terror, period.
Well, first of all, let's be honest and candid about this. When Ted Cruz talks about the administration scrubbing, what he's referring to is Homeland Security, the FBI, the Department of Justice, our leaders in first response to these outrageous threats we face every day as Americans. Obviously, things are going to happen. Mistakes are going to be made. Issues are going to fall through. But by and large, I think the idea that Ted Cruz used his Senate panel to play partisan politics and attack the FBI and Homeland Security and Justice, those who have kept us safe from so many dangerous threats that we faced, is just partisan politics at its worst.
He's wondering whether political correctness is getting in the way of... Tucker's laughing at you.
Well, of course he's laughing.
That's not nice.
He can't respond.
But he's wondering whether political correctness is getting in the way of honesty,
Megan, it's
taking
not
an honest assessment of the enemy.
You know, the reason the Bush administration never used the word radical Islam or radical Muslims is because it wasn't about political correctness, it was about political strategy. Because from the right and the left, there's a recognition from our generals in particular, we have to connect better with the Sunni Muslims in the Middle East, with the Muslim community here.
That doesn't necessarily mean scrubbing all of our documents from the term Sharia and
That has nothing
jihad.
to do with it. I mean, it's nothing to do with it. And by the way, I love that the Obama people are now citing Bush as precedent for...
They love George W. Bush.
What I love is the hypocrisy of the right wing that forgets that.
Let's be totally honest here. This has nothing to do with national security. The Obama people feel sincerely, and it is sincere, that the real threat lies here with our middle class, which is bigoted and scary and likely to rise up against Muslims living in this country if they're allowed to know that there's an Islamic component to the terror threat. So hold on, let me finish. This is true. This is how they think. They believe that if they say this is an Islamic threat, that there will somehow be pogroms against Muslims living here, because they believe, again, that the real threat lies with the bigoted American people.
We now have Tucker using Michael Moore's talking points against George W. Bush to now spin conspiracies. To now use conspiracies against the Obama administration.
But Loretta Lynch did threaten people with criminal prosecution if they said things that were anti-Muslim. We saw a U.S. attorney just do this in Idaho, right? It's in Idaho, that case. And then she had to walk it back. That's not made up. There have been threats. And in both instances, the prosecutors had to walk it back because it's illegal to threaten people for
the bigger
what
point
they
is
say.
this. The idea that is being spread by the right wing, and it speaks to the hypocrisy of the right and of Ted Cruz.
What's the idea?
The idea that all of a sudden this administration is not dedicated to taking on Muslim threats and terrorists throughout the world. No administration has launched more drone attacks, killed more terrorists than this administration. But here's the point, Tucker. Hold on, Tucker. Don't interrupt me. Here's the point. At the same time that you failed to bring up, of course, the Bush administration's policy that you're now condemning.
Now you're
and the fact that, no, it's totally irrelevant, because at the same time, you're talking about, in fact, protecting the due process of terror suspects to buy and collect arms and guns, while you talk a big game against terrorists.
You've lost me in your reasoning, but let me just restate the real point here. I do think that they recognize this threat. I think they recognize it as an Islamic threat. I think they fear if they say that out loud, the American public can't handle it because they have contempt for the public. Obama says it in virtually every public statement.
This
country is seething with bigotry. That's what he says.
He says that's not the reason. He says that if we make it sound like we're at war with Islam at large, and he thinks that's what saying radical Islam will do, it only adds fuel to the fire.
That's ludicrous.
That's what the Bush administration.
That's for Tucker.
These are sophisticated, smart people. They know that that's not true. They know the video didn't cause Benghazi. They know all of it. But their prime concern is keeping our population from hurting Muslims who live here.
Let's understand. No administration has been more aggressive going after Hezbollah, going after Al-Qaeda, going after ISIS, and made that clear. And that being said, we unite as a country, we can beat terrorism. Happy July 4th.
Whatever. Happy July 4th.
Whatever. And that's the partisanship I'm talking about.
Stop it. You know you love each other. It's great to see you. What the hell is going on here? Well, the Fox affiliate in Baltimore is breaking a big exclusive tonight. You're going to hear it right here. And it could spell some big trouble for the
bathroom for another 2.5 hours. Orlando police have been criticized for waiting too long, but now The Orlando police chief says when he said the shooting stopped at 2:18, he was basing that on what the FBI's timeline was. Megan.
Trace, thank you. Well, this week, the Kelly File assembled a powerful panel on the issue of terror, including some survivors of recent attacks in Orlando, as well as Fort Hood, as well as victims' families. Also in our group, veterans, liberals, conservatives, and advocates for the Muslim community, all here to discuss the battle against Islamic extremism. It was extraordinary. Tonight, discussion begins with yours truly questioning one of the Fort Hood terror attack victims. Alonzo Lunsford was shot 7 times, including once in the head. And I asked him what happens when he hears about another attack, such as what happened in Orlando earlier this month. Watch. You spoke with me a couple years ago about some PTSD and just what that had done to you, having been shot so many times. When you see something like this happen in Orlando, or what we saw in Istanbul, does it bring that back for you? What does it do?
Oh, it does. It brings back the actual event that happened that day to us in 2009, but also it makes one wonder, what are we going to do to minimize the blow that these terrorists are doing to us on our own soil? And years ago, we had talked about soft targets, hard targets and soft targets. What they're trying to do is they're identifying soft targets because of the psychological effect that it has on Americans. So what we need to do, in my opinion, is that we need to work more closely together between military and law enforcement so we're all speaking the same language. We also need to practice response times, but we don't need to necessarily identify large cities. We need to look at small town America as well, because that's where the soft targets are.
Do you feel like they've given up on that? I mean, the messaging that we've gotten in recent days has been, you know, this is something that in modern day America we may have to learn to live with, because we can't find all of the threats.
Well, we can find the threats, but I think that a lot of censorship has been going on, whereas Americans, they see it, they hear it, but they don't really know exactly what it feels like. And this panel that we have today is going to answer a lot of those questions.
Rosa, when you suffered a loss on 9/11, and of course that was the terror attack of them all here in the United States.
You know, my niece just graduated from high school here in Manhattan and is going to Boston College. And when I look around and I don't see her father and I see my sister sitting there crying 15 years later, I'm so angry. We have learned absolutely nothing.
We need to look at this on multiple fronts, and one of the fronts is we have to be willing to fight this enemy head on with force, but also we have to wage a social war too. I mean, you have, let's say 10% of Muslims are radicalized and willing to do harm, 20% are perfectly willing to live within our customs and our ideology, but then you have that 70% in the middle that's unwilling to report the suicide vest that they see from their friend or report the radicalization of anybody they know. You also have America that is afraid to speak out. We need to fight this on all these fronts, and it's not going to be done through love.
Anybody else? Go ahead, sir.
Well, it's interesting hearing these made-up statistics. 10% of Muslims are radicalized. I assume that was just invented because it sounds like a good number. 20% aren't willing to report. You can talk about criticizing political correctness, but that's a bumper sticker. That's a slogan. That's not a strategy. That's not a plan.
Why can't they call it what it is? How do you fight something that you can't call out? You need to call it out. You need to stop thinking about these kumbaya, and your bumper sticker is bleeding all over the place.
Kimberly,
so
go ahead.
Spare me.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
I completely agree with you, because we toss up the word political correctness. Well, I'm sorry, that's the problem, because if we exclude his pledge to ISIS during the attack, we exclude Hassan being able to go up in his own free will and announce his pledge to what at the time was the Taliban, and then he switched over to ISIS, whatever's the going factor at the time, and we suppress that information. That information is not put out to the public because it's politically sensitive.
I think the solution here is to look at a proven model versus shallow theories. We've launched a True Islam campaign where we've looked at 11 points that the extremists are using to radicalize these terrorists, and we're saying here's the counter narrative. So a short-term solution, law enforcement, all those things.
You need to go to the mosques and get them to repeat that.
And the problem is inconsistent Muslim leadership.
And I bet probably they have not responded. And the problem is you are the minority. What we have right now is Muslim mosques in America radicalized, harboring terrorists, knowing that there are radicals within the mosque, and they're not reporting about it.
What we have is the largest organized Muslim community. We have over 100 sites, 70 mosques in America where they're wide open. Police, law enforcement, we're open.
The majority of mosques in America are not listening to moderates like you.
You have to see the whole thing. You trust me on this. Set the